Almost there. Yes, now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Asif, for this opportunity. So first and foremost thing, congratulations to all of you for registering to this course. This is one of the courses that I've been through twice. Thank you, Asif. I was part of Support Vectors. I'm currently working for a Fortune 34 company, driving the strategic Gen AI strategic initiatives, and also working with major customers. Unfortunately, I can't reveal the names, but that's what I'm doing currently. I've learned quite a much at Support Vectors, and I'm just trying to bring in some of the things that from an industry perspective, most of this information is public information. I would say pretty much everything is public information. So let me go ahead and get started. So it's quickly a brief overview about me. I've been in the industry for 28 years. I'm a computer science grad, and I have an MBA, and I've done my Wharton Executive Education CTO program, which is Chief Technology Officer program, and that's where I met Asif. Asif was my cohort, and we had a wonderful opportunity to spend some time and do some, massive, good show and tell, and at the same time educational type of sessions for our cohort members. I'm a PhD candidate. I'm about to wrap up my overall thesis, and it's in the thesis stage right now. I have a bunch of industry certifications. If you'd like to follow me, there is a QR code. You don't have to follow me, or you don't have to LinkedIn with me. I just put it out there. So let's talk about the industry as a whole, right? Generative AI and AI is, as you probably have been seeing, is massively, kind of transforming the world, if you will. One of the things that I would all of you want to kind of keep this in mind is that, there's one of the report that I have read was a $10 trillion money is at stake with the AI transformation. So that tells you the amount of money that's going into this from an investments perspective, and so on and so forth. So what does that mean, right? All these massive number of companies popping up everywhere, and trying to build their platforms, products, solutions. All of these are in a kind of a gold rush in working with major players, and to kind of partner and be an acquisition target and advance their products and solutions and all that good stuff. So I have had the opportunity to kind of witness some of those massive advancements and so on and so forth. So I want to take you through a few kind of viral videos to begin with. Let me start one, and hopefully you have your audio on at this point. So I'm going to play a little video, and if you have seen this previously, pardon me for that, but it's important for us to kind of look at the next things to see this video. Hopefully you can hear the audio.
Is our passion for what we do. We walk with purpose in every step. Doesn't matter who you are. We all have the power to change the world. Every obstacle is a fresh start. Every fall teaches us something new. Together, we break any limits, and we're ready for the challenge.
That's exactly why I wanted to show this video. This whole thing, let me go back to the presentation. So as you have seen, it's about 57 second video. This whole advertisement was created in 2 hours with Flux and Runway. And everything in the video that you have seen is by AI, including the humans. So imagine the kind of attention span the current generation has, a very limited attention span, always looking for the fresh content. And these companies, these major companies, have the ability through AI to be able to generate some of these and send it through their TikToks and Instagrams, X platform, all of that good stuff. So there's tremendous amount of that potential that they're bagging on. What you have seen is actually a production video from Adidas. So I'm going to show you one more. Hopefully you can hear the sound as well.
Volvo for life.
Okay, so this is another example, and I just wanted to show you this, and you're going to be shocked. So this was created by one person using AI in one day. That's like almost 1000x cheaper than actually filming, editing, making this ad. These are not my comments. These are from Bindu. So as you can see, the freshness and the creativity that AI is bringing onto the table, where the major companies have already started deploying and using it to kind of attract the customers. So I'm going to show you one more example in here. And this might look a little creepy, but I kind of love this. And hopefully you have a better sound system, because you're going to literally love this. Another amazing creation by AI. So just to go back in here. So this whole thing, the entire music and the whole video, all of that was, done by using the AI models. As you can see, the freshness of content, the creativity that's coming in, the kind of cost reduction that, that companies are looking at, and there are enormous there is enormous potential for companies to kind of leverage AI models, especially in the case of in the area of marketing, in the area of sales, and so much of the social media kind of push and so on and so forth. So just wanted to give you some examples of where the industry is moving. So now let's go into the models that you all see, right? Example being Llama 3. I don't know how many of you have been truly looking at the facts of how this model kind of shaped up, and what really is has happened, and how much the compute went into it, the effort went into it, and all that good stuff. So just to give you a perspective, obviously this is a model, it's an autoregressive model. As we all know, it kind of generates the next token, which Asif would cover quite a much in everything that he teaches in here. So if you think about Llama 3 as a model, it has 8K context length. I was trained on 15 trillion tokens. And this is the most important fact here is it was trained on 24,000 GPU cluster, and all of them are H100s, since H200s haven't been released yet. So that's what it was trained on. As you can see, the bread and butter for creating the models right now, and the speed that these are evolving right now, is all the GPU infrastructure that's kind of shaping up the world. So if you basically dissect this and look at from a cost perspective, um, it's a little fun fact, basically, which is Llama 3.1 405 billion took about 40 million GPU hours to train at about $4 per GPU hour. That implies about $120 million to train the entire model. So that's almost as good as just making one blockbuster Hollywood film. So how many blockbuster Hollywood films that we see? So that kind of tells you if Llama 3 can basically become a de facto for most of the enterprises where they're looking at the open source models, you know, making the movie, and spending this much of cost for one model literally opens up a lot of potential, as from an investor's perspective, for bringing in the freshness, from a compute sales, and so on and so forth. So just wanted to give you that perspective, and it is one side of the thing to basically think about the money that's going in the compute that's kind of augmenting into this. There is another side of it, is the strategic side of it. So I'm going to show you a nice simulation. That simulation kind of shows, how this Llama 3, the whole commits in GitHub have really shaped up, and how much the open source community has been really actively contributing into it, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go back in here and show you a little bit. Sorry, probably have to bring this back in here. Just bear with me 1 second. So this is a little longer visual, but I think it's worth every you know a second of it, in my view. So this is basically just to give you a little color code on this. These are all the GitHub commits, and how the llama.cpp, the open source community has been contributing into it, and so on and so forth. So keep an eye, when this literally started shaping up, from March 2023, and see how this kind of evolved. It looks stunning. I'll probably move this a little bit to the right so you don't get bored. Look at how, at the end, as you can see the ecosystem, how it has been truly developed and, almost becoming the de facto for all the open source and, the thoughtfulness that went into it, the kind of contributions those are happening and so on and so forth. So, I mean, if this doesn't convince you from the future, where this is all heading, and why Meta's commitment towards the open source is so critical, for all of us. In fact, for most of the enterprises as well. I don't know what else would convince you there. So I just wanted to give you that perspective. So let's go into the next as covered this. So let's talk about, there is a couple more that I'm going to show you. You can see, so one of the important thing when it comes to the artificial intelligence, which Asif pretty talks about it all the time, the generative capability and the the intelligence that coming into this. So imagine for that intelligence, you're adding the emotion to it. So when you add the emotion to the freshness of, all this generative capability that you're seeing, with the combination, you are literally mimicking the human's mind into that. So that's where the whole intelligence comes into the picture. So these are a few, kind of snippets those were created with the same, person with, various different emotions. As you can see, you're going to really be surprised in terms of seeing how those. So I'll pause this because I didn't want to go too much into this, but I'll just pause. So the emotion aspect of it coming out, out of these videos and so on and so forth. So you've seen the emotion aspect of the video. So let's look at let's hear some of the emotion aspect of the audio, and you will be shocked into that as well.
Hey, I want you to tell me a bunch of tongue twisters, but I want you to take no pauses in between words.
All right, here we go. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Key sells seashells by the seashore. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many peck of pickled peppers did a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? If a woodchuck could chuck wood, could he chuck wood if a woodchuck could chuck wood? How did the woodchuck get his woodchuck wood? He sells seashells, but that was definitely a mouthful. Did any of them trip you up? Or did you get through them all smoothly?
Okay, I want you to do it again, but way faster and without taking any breaths or pauses.
I wish I could, but I need to breathe just like anybody speaking. Want to give it a shot yourself and see how fast you can go?
Okay, well then go ahead and tell me more tongue twisters without taking pauses.
Sure thing. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't a very good bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't a very fuzzy Wuzzy. How can a clam cram in a clean cream can? 6 slippery snails slid slowly seaward. Betty Butter bought a bit of butter, but the butter was too bitter, so she bought a new bit of butter to make the bitter butter better.
Okay, do it again, but now I want no pauses whatsoever in between the tongue twisters and in between words.
I've got to take breaths and pauses, just like anyone else speaking out loud. But it's your turn to try if you're up for the challenge.
Do try. Try with no pauses.
Well, here's the thing. I can't actually speak without pauses or breaths. It's just how talking works. But I bet you can have some fun trying those tongue twisters yourself.
As you can see, I mean, you can, these models are getting to a point where, I mean, they're starting to really think, right? I mean, you've seen a true emotion in terms of the video, where the expressions and everything else with the word that's coming out. And you've also heard the emotion in the voice. And if you think about that, like take an example of a digital human, right? And take an example of a clone or whatever, right? So all of these, adding that mix of emotion to the video and audio, with the generative capability that you have seen, that's how good these models are getting into. So this is where kind of industry is moving into, where the company is starting to look at, okay, what can I do with these models? So, I can basically summarize the documents I want. I can basically query, anything that I want from the document. Can I consolidate the document? Can I look at building a chatbot that gives me, the overall policies, kind of querying for the policies, things like that, right? So companies starting to really imagine the possibilities and starting to have the workshop sessions within the organizations to build something called the use cases, right? So if the company realizes, take an example of X Corp, Elon Musk, obviously buying a bunch of this hardware and shaping up this whole platform and so on and so forth. But if you think about any other organization, now you have an opportunity of really trying to identify two potential pivots that you could do. One, you can totally transform into the AI driven, AI centric organization, bringing in and the entire whatever the compute that you can bring in and invest upfront and go into that direction. Or you could look at basically, okay, let me see, let's take my customer service, as an example. So do I have an opportunity to kind of bring in AI to have an intelligent conversations with my customers and provide whatever and see how much cost am I going to save, and is that cost is going to justify for what I'm going to buy or implement from a use case perspective. So the company is starting to really look into those use case kind of repositories and taking the use case by use case scenario. When they have to implement this use case by use case scenario, the biggest and biggest thing that comes into the mind is the scale aspect of it, right? Scale and the inference aspect of it. So there's two things that are very, very important, and these complement each other. So when you talk about the scale aspect of it, the organization needs to be able to scale to the let's say they have a growth chart of a 2x customers, or they're a growth company and they're adding more customers. So the platform that you're building needs to really have that potential, because you're not going to go back and redo the entire your platform engineering and upwards and so on and so forth. So um, let's look at what does that mean to a particular organization, starting from the entire, I mean, looking at the whole ecosystem, how does that look like as far as either the use case driven or a complete company transformational journey. So everything that happens in an organization, as you all know, start with planning. So in this case, you're literally planning based on your total cost of ownership, based on your return on investment, based on your the productivity gains that you're going to get, all of that. So you're basically planning based on that, and then you're justifying for your moving into this AI driven or generative AI capabilities to be bought into the company. So the first thing that happens in this whole ecosystem is your hardware layer, right? So when it comes to the hardware layer, one of the most critical piece that everybody misses is the networking aspect of it, right? So your compute is as good as the complementing networking that you need to have. The NVIDIA introduced a platform to manage the networking. It's called the InfiniBand. There's a lot of this cabling, revolution that's going on, the optics revolution that's going on. One of I've learned this as part of my job. One of the thing that I've learned is that these cables that actually go for connecting these stacks, these hardware stacks, is basically each cable costs about $2,000. So if you really think about that, right? So you have to meticulously plan for your hardware configuration. So the major players in this area are NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD. Each one of them have their own, strengths, and so on and so forth. And obviously NVIDIA is super advanced, as we all know. Their Blackwell chip seems to have been a little bit delayed, but right now the H100, H200s, all of that is kind of taking over the whole enterprise purchase and so on and so forth. So some of the companies like Dell and Supermicro, they're partnered with NVIDIA, and they have this, especially Dell, they have something called AI Factory. So the AI Factory, when you purchase and you size your use cases and you purchase the AI Factory, you're literally purchasing the entire hardware stack all the way up to the software layer. So the licenses included and some of the services included and so on and so forth. So companies are starting to really look at providing that perspective to the enterprises, where do I better off go into cloud and really start doing my use cases, or do I better off go on prem and buy the infrastructure that justifies for my ROI and TCO and so on and so forth. So that's where most of the decision making is currently taking place. And then there is one a very other important aspect that the most of the folks that um, are not aware, or maybe not paying much attention to it, is the inference hardware layer. So there are literally companies like Grok, Sambanova, they're building their own chip for the inference aspect of it. Your models are trained, now you're serving for the production scenario. So the inferencing is the most extreme critical part, because you don't want the user sitting and waiting for these tokens to be generated. You want the user to be having a real-time experience. So when all this packaging that happens and these companies talking to the customers, they are literally providing that end-to-end kind of a solution. If you haven't checked out, check out grok.com, so you get an idea of what that inferencing is about and so on and so forth. So, and there's also some of the investments going into this inference chip manufacturing and designs currently, that there's a lot of companies popping up, and they're trying to find ways where they can take the lock-in out of NVIDIA and have a flexibility and so on and so forth. And another thing that's shaping up here is the inference open source solutions. Triton is one of the inference solution that NVIDIA has, which is open source, but they're looking at basically not having a lock-in, and looking for something that works across the silicon. So that's the hardware layer. So what comes next is the platform stack, right? So your hardware layer is as good as if platform stack doesn't scale up, right? So this is what exactly you're going to learn as part of this bootcamp, that Asif would bring in so much of these pipelines that you're going to be creating and orchestrating and bringing in all the inference solutions and stuff like that. So Kubernetes is one of the majorly accepted currently from an orchestration perspective, while OpenShift is another solution on Kubernetes that from Red Hat. Racer, you're gonna learn about that in this course, and I think Asif is planning on having a separate course for Racer alone, because that warrants a much more rigorous focus there. Kubeflow, ClearML, Run AI. If you haven't heard about Run AI, NVIDIA kind of purchased Run AI. Right now, it's going to the antitrust, some DOJ investigation, but I think they're progressing forward. NVIDIA also has something called NVIDIA AI Enterprise, which is basically, some of these organizations, when they sell, it comes with that NVIDIA AI Enterprise, and they have the option of going with, either OpenShift or NVIDIA AI Enterprise. And this is InfiniBand. So InfiniBand is, kind of a network solutioning from NVIDIA perspective with the cabling that, that they sell and so on and so forth. So the next thing is your tools and models layer, which is this is where most of the developers, data scientists, all of you be interfacing on some of these packages and models and so on and so forth. And I only listed a few. And then comes your actual user experience layer, right? So this is where you have the chatbots, you have this RAG implementation, you have the analytics, you have the intelligence that comes in, and robotics, and and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much how you need to kind of view this whole AI at a scale as the ecosystem, that without these four key building blocks, you will not be able to really serve what you are trying to serve as the business outcome, out of whatever that you're doing, either a product or a service, or some things like that. So now that you have seen the stack, each of these stacks and layers in an ecosystem, let's look at diving into this is what you will learn as part of this bootcamp. Is I just took this, this is not mine, I took it from Abacus AI. This is a live platform right now as we speak. So one of the things that I love about this platform is that anytime there is a new model comes in, they have everything stitched up so well that all these metrics benchmarks, they're the first ones to kind of announce, saying, oh, okay, so the Llama 3.1 is much better than Grok 2, or stuff like that, right? So they are able to do that faster, they're able to launch things faster, and so on and so forth. So this kind of gives you a visual view, and you don't necessarily have to be looking at your LLM ops being in the exact same structure. So what does this mean, right? So your data or your corpus is the input to that, and then you have all the data pipelines, and you bring in your embeddings pipelines, and you can have a choice of your own vector store. There is about 36 vector databases in our vector stores currently available in the industry, and there is some good comparison metrics available, and I'll try to post that in our Discord channel. And then comes your model serving, right? So your model serving, you have options here. Either you go with the standard model, or you fine tune your model so you keep your proprietary data in house, or you build a RAG application, right? And then in some cases you may be accessing the cloud APIs for bringing in the access and all that good stuff, and a lot of other things. You can generate the code. There are some models available for generating the codes, and the most important thing is the model monitoring. So this is another totally not talked type of a field, which is the monitoring. Observability is one of the very important thing. There are some products available and are shaping up, and this is one area that is, in my view, there's plenty of opportunities for any kind of innovators to find products and look at data and building the models and products and stuff like that. So then comes your agentic framework. You can build on top of this whole ecosystem. So having a holistic architectural mind like this, and a setup like this for any enterprise, gives you the flexibility. So gives you the flexibility to be able to really launch products faster, develop your use cases faster, implement your use cases faster, and then build your AI agents faster, and consolidate, mix and match, and then test your responsible AI guardrails, and so on and so forth, which I believe Asif is going to cover some of the system prompting as part of the prompt engineering here, which is another area that is not being much talked in the industry, which is the AI governance. There is a governance framework that is available, and the AI regulations are popping up pretty much on a daily basis. So for example, yesterday or day before yesterday, Australia launched its AI regulation policy, and a day before that, South Africa launched it, and 2 weeks before that, prior to that, um, one of the African country, Nigeria, launched their AI regulation, and most of you probably know, EU AI Act became effective from August 1st. So EU AI Act is extremely stringent. And there are, there are things that, the companies are really afraid to kind of launch in EU at this point. For example, Llama 3, one of the models that they have decided not to launch there. And there was a public announcement about it because of the EU AI Act, and and this the penalties are too much. And one example in those penalty scenario is that one of the demands that EU AI Act is giving is having for the companies in EU. They need to train their employees prior to having them do any AI work. It's a mandatory, and there's about $9 million fine if they don't do, and they're caught. I believe it's 9 million. I may be wrong. So things like that, the responsible AI is one of the most important field, and you will learn, a lot of this system prompting and so on and so forth. So that being said, I'm gonna basically show you how the programming or the language or the code generation is kind of shaping up in the industry. So take a look at this example that I have here. This individual actually works for Elon Musk. Let me pause. Show you. See how interactive the code generation and optimization is kind of taking place currently. It's just one example to give you. As you can see, I mean, the things are getting so efficient and effective in terms of the code generation aspects of it. So, as I mentioned, the code is going to be the code generation through AI and these generative models is going to be the next thing with prompting. So prompting becomes the most of the, as a programming language. So that's where I would focus as much as possible, to learn all the templates, how do you build it, how do you do this, agentic way planning, all that good stuff, and dynamic prompting and stuff like that. So there is one recent paper that came out, which is so interesting. And I was shocked looking at this. So it's called the AI Scientist. As a PhD candidate, I know exactly how hard it is to write an industry acceptable paper in latex, and going through and reading through the similar research and consolidating your thought, taking your hypothesis and really providing the data and stuff like that. So this particular agent, the intelligent agent, the AI scientist, for $15, they can basically generate a complete end-to-end paper for you. That if that doesn't, make freak you out from an advancement perspective, I'm not sure what else will. And you can read this paper. I'll share the slides with you all, so you have a copy of it. There is a link to the archive paper for that. As I said, the AI scientist now is only $15 a paper. So how does this work, right? The AI scientist thing, right? So this is a 3-step process. Um, Basically, all you have to do is, you come up with this ideation and a plan side of thing, and then LLMs will do everything else for you. So basically doing a novelty check for, looking at all the Scholar databases, and then, it's basically doing the ideation scoring, and then it's creating the experiment template. And that's the most important thing, because there are certain templates, formats are mandatory when you're working and publishing, especially the conferences like KDD and stuff like that. they meticulously look at every character, word, and everything else. And there's so many reviews that these papers go through for a formal publication. I am still struggling with that, okay, to be honest with you. So, as you can see, it's basically creating the code and it's experimenting it, it's executing the script, and then it's updating the plan and it's providing all the plots and finally giving you the end paper. And you have an option here, right? So once you have this paper, now you have a way of really, proofreading it and adding whatever additional thoughts that you can, and so on and so forth. So what does this mean? It's literally taking to the next level of finding out the new experimental possibilities here, right? So if humans are dried up with their mind and ideas, now the machine is helping you pretty much. So the next one I would watch out a little bit is the optimization by prompting. I'm sure Asif would cover in one of those Wednesday sessions. This is another nice paper. It's kind of helping you to write your prompt and proofread your prompt and generate the prompt and create a dynamic way of creating the prompts. It's called meta prompt and so on and so forth. So that's one thing I'll leave you with that. This particular thing has proven like it has 8% higher accuracy on challenging reasoning tasks. So if you're able to figure out the reasoning and emotion and the accuracy and these three aspects for any generation that you do from a content perspective, you are you have literally conquered the world.
By the way,
So
just to interject, this is actually part of the course that these folks are going through.
oh,
We
that
will
is
be
awesome.
covering this. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you, Asif. So another quick look for you. This is as of today. I'm just giving you the information as of today. So these are all the models. Those are standing up as as the best models in terms of the model as overall and by the company and the open weights models and stuff like that. So Grok 2 is so much nice that I hear on Grok 2, and a lot of people are generating some kind of crazy videos and audios with the election around the corner. I've seen some things are really worrisome, but anyway, so there's a lot of it's just to give you a perspective. So let's look at the future, right? These are my views, and these are forward-looking statements. So please bear with me on this. How is the future is going to be with generative AI? Well, the ecosystem is going to have your foundational models, your specialized models. For example, NVIDIA recently released an 8 billion synthetic data creation model for the industry specific segments. So you can, if you're truly trying to do something, in a medical field, so you can basically use NVIDIA model and, generate some of the synthetic data using that and so on and so forth, right? So there's so many specialized models coming up, and your prompt becomes your computer language, as we have truly seen. That's what you're going to learn as part of these boot camps, that you will basically surprise your companies, or you will get a tremendous number of ideas for your investments if you are really looking at being an entrepreneur and so on and so forth. So the mixture of agents is another big deal, with a click of a simple prompt, like what Google has demoed. If you have attended the Google session, they have demoed and somebody, literally asking the agent to book a flight and plan for a trip to go somewhere. And it has taken care of every step on the way, and it has generated and it also paid for that trip and created an email and provided all that in just one. As the end output is just one email and then a text message saying, okay, your trip has been booked, and so on and so forth. So the mixture of agents is a major thing that's going to play a role here, because you're going to have this kind of planning agent and orchestration and dynamically kind of calling the other agents and so on and so forth. So the multimodality, we all know with the machine learning, it's all been like, there is this concept of, ensemble models and so on and so forth, but multimodality, to be able to actually bring in all of these models cohesively in a well-served organization, like we need to be very clear about this, right? So your hardware kind of an investment is the key driver for how much you could bring in to your table, right? So this multimodality becomes piece of cake if you have, like, let's say 1,000 H100s in your data center. That's very, very easy for you to do that. Accelerated and dynamic code generation. So the code generation, dynamic code generation, this is another very important point. If you haven't checked this out, there is a company called Cognition .ai, and they've developed an agent called Devin. So Devin, with a prompt, it literally goes, writes the code, debugs the code, fix the code, and then gives you the end code. And the most of the time that we as programmers or developers or researchers that we spend is the debugging of code, right? And it's kind of helping you with that process, and imagine the kind of productivity that you would have. So the accelerated computer networking. So the innovation in the networking area is fast pacing at this point. That is the most important dimension that many are ignoring. But the accelerated compute, for example, you have heard Intel releasing Gaudi 3, AMD is in the verge of releasing more and more chips from what I could see. NVIDIA, releasing the H200 recently. I personally had an opportunity to see H200 open from a delivered box, and unscrewing that and trying to put it into the racks and so on and so forth. So the stuff is very real. Just wanted to give you that. So that's where the future is going to be. You don't see anywhere that you're going to be sitting down and writing the code here, right? That is the important part. And most of the companies are trying to figure out how I can deliver to these enterprises the a la carte way of really pick and choose and build the pipelines, all that good stuff. So what you are learning here is the foundation, and that's the key for any organization, right, as part of these boot camps. And then comes your implementation framework. So you bring in all of this, how you do that implementation. And one of the interesting thing that came out recently is a paper called Any Tool. Gives you an API level of access to like 16,000 canned tools and so on and so forth. And it's kind of evolving, and they're continuously adding more and more on tools to make this much more easy. The other one of my favorites was the Route LLM. So the Route LLM took off because of cost. A lot of companies wanted to kind of compromise in terms of the accuracy, the quality of accuracy versus the cost. So this Route LLM helps you to call the right LLM and save your token cost and the inference cost and so on and so forth. So what would that mean from a generation perspective, right? So now you're going to be able to have a dynamic user experience, right? So every day you're going to have a fresh experience for the user, from whatever the business function standpoint. The second thing is the personalized user experience. This is very, very important, the personalized user experience. I didn't show one of the agent demo that I had a video on, but the personalized user experience, it's going to get you more customers, and all that good stuff. The new discoveries. There is one fact that I wanted to recently published a study that I wanted to share with you all from a new discoveries perspective. So they have proven that AI is capable of basically identifying the breast cancer risk 5 years before it is even formed. I mean, just think about that for a second. 5 years before it is even formed. So, and that is how fast the things are going, because the data, the historical data that they have, it's kind of fast evolving. And I've literally seen with the major airlines, I have literally seen that the use case of basically doing the the drone inspections, inspections through drones and taking the pictures rather than typically they send people to the wing and the humans basically go with a lot of that taking the risk and going up there and taking eyeballing for the for the defects or whatever the problems there. Also they take the pictures physically. Now imagine the drone doing that, and you're saving a lot of cost and you're saving the risks as well. Oops, sorry. And then helpers, right? So this is all going to be helper and helper driven, because that your productivity, that's where the productivity accelerator comes into the picture. And then robotics. So I wanted to share a quick one post on robotics. It's exactly came in 6 hours ago. So you're very fresh seeing that everything that's happening in the AI and robotics this week. So as you can see, Google launched Gemini Live. It's a mobile conversational AI with voice capabilities. And Google also launched Pixel Bud Pro 2 worldwide. OpenAI launched ChatGPT 4o model that claims to be the top spot. The Apple pushing ahead with tabletop robot. And as you can see, Astribot is their new humanoid, and Elon Musk is super eager to kind of get the humanoid out that he's building, and he's quoting around like $15,000 to $20,000. I mean, who wouldn't want a humanoid in the house doing the dishes every day if I can spend $15,000, right? So that's where the things are going. As you can see, this is what we talked about, AI scientist, and then Grok 2 came out, and stuff like that. So just to give you a perspective of how fast things are going. So finally, I will leave you with a few thoughts for aligning into this boot camp and being a little bit open-minded and so on and so forth. So the first and foremost thing, learn to play with LLMs, right? So what is the foundational code? How do you basically play around with the LLMs and so on and so forth? So focus more on learning to play with LLMs before you start really going deep into trying to build the LLMs. You can build the LLM, as you have seen, $160 million. You can build one. So master the prompt engineering. It's a very important, building block to keep in mind. And then have a holistic mindset. And this is what I struggled when I was learning through the first time, and as if introduced so many building blocks of technology things, and trying to connect the dots. And this is why I gave that ecosystem. If you recall the previous slide, the ecosystem mindset is very important from hardware all the way up to the user. So having that holistic mind, where is this component going to be helping me? How is this component becomes a key part of the overall use case implementation ecosystem, and so on and so forth. keep it keep a tab on all these new chips coming out. What does that mean? Learn about it. Why is this whole gold rush is going on now? Like what is exactly this compute is doing, right? So keep reading about that. That gives you a whole different mindset. Decide which direction you want to go. For example, are you if your company is very cloud focused, is inference is okay, security vulnerability is okay, you have to do a little bit of an assessment and make a decision and be able to persuade your companies whether on-prem or cloud. So we have seen both sides of the coin where I work, but mostly going into on-prem. Of course, we do that mostly. Follow some key industry advocates on social media platforms. Example, X. As you have seen, most of my information was from X, and I've recently introduced Asif to X, so he's now going to get addicted into that. um, do not chase the shiny object of everything that's being released into the market. This is one mistake that we always do, that you see so many papers coming out. Oh, what does this mean? And so on and so forth. I would not worry about those until you have 20 people kind of talking about it, right? So otherwise you're literally chasing your tail. That you will be lost, because the way research works is that, somebody does some research and another person finds a small little tweak into that, and then comes a paper. So I'm being open, and I know we're recording this, and that's the little secret. But I would say, just to not chase that shiny object of every paper that you see, but stay with the foundation. Asif has done so much work here to get you introduced to the right foundational building blocks of things. And the next key to the acceptance of AI is to bring human-like experience. So this is where most of the products are failing, in my view. When I say human-like experience, I've shown you how the emotion works. I've shown you how the video, integrates into that emotion, and so on and so forth. So you need to be very close to the human-like experience. Whatever the product you're building, whatever the solution you're building, whatever the use case you're building, the closer you get to that human-like experience is better that your product acceptance is going to be. That's a very, 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 very important, because that's being asked massively in the industry, which I have had the first-hand experience of really talking to the customers. So again, that means you need to stay current with the research as well at the same time. But stay current with the research in terms of, there is one, for example, Google recently released a diffusion. It's almost an alternate for RAG through diffusion, if I'm not wrong. I'm sure Asif will cover that in one of those days. That has taken everybody by a storm. And also, if you haven't heard about this, something called Mamba, I would start learning that. And I think that's one of the things that I'm sure Asif will cover. The reason
Actually,
why
Sushinda is presenting on Mamba very
Oh,
soon.
nice. That is awesome. So one little quick pointer there, I was a little skeptical about that whole thing, but I was thinking like, okay, it'll take time and all that. NVIDIA already released an 8 billion Mamba model. That tells you things not stopping. Okay. The thing about NVIDIA, we all have to understand, NVIDIA is super deep into deep learning, and their platforms that they're building is all data science, and they're bringing in all of these innovations, and they have this hardware access that they're almost like throwing it the first time. They're putting it out to the industry the first time before anybody else catches up, while this the mega tech basically is trying to build their own strategic way, like what you have seen with Llama in that simulation. That's it. Thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully this is helpful to give that perspective. I'll stop the presentation, Asif.
Yeah, and thank you,